My name is Adam Keller. I'm 33 years old, a freelance photojournalist, and what I'm about to share is not a story, it's a warning. I never believed in anything remotely supernatural. Ghosts, time loops, cursed forests, those were the stuff of fiction, the backdrop for movies you watch with popcorn. I laughed at that sort of thing, but I don't laugh anymore. Not since the path. The one that doesn't end. The one that turns in on itself in ways it should not. The one where the trees shift and breathe, and something walks behind you no matter how fast you run. I stumbled upon it by accident in October of last year, and I barely came back. It began with a freelance gig for Explore America, a digital travel magazine I occasionally shot for. They were compiling a series on forgotten hiking trails in the Pacific Northwest, the kind that never made it into guidebooks. My task was simple. Take atmospheric photos of trails outside public knowledge, interview a local if possible, and write a 500-word blurb. Easy pay. My contact was a man named Roy Chambers, an ex-forest ranger turned eccentric recluse who lived near the Columbia Gorge in Oregon. I called him twice before getting a response. When he answered, his voice was hoarse and suspicious. It took some convincing, but he finally agreed to show me a path he described only as the loop. He warned me to bring good boots, spare batteries, and something personal in case you get stuck. I thought he was just being dramatic. Now, I know he wasn't. Roy lived in a trailer surrounded by chicken wire and strange totems. Carved sticks, bones tied to trees, empty glass jars buried neck deep in the soil. I should have left the moment I saw them, but I needed the shots. He was tall, hunched with skin like parchment and eyes that darted everywhere, even when I was the only one speaking. He wore 3 watches on one wrist. "I'll take you as far as the mouth," he said. "You could go further, but I ain't crossing that boundary anymore. You step in, you do it alone." I asked what the big deal was. He just handed me an old compass. "Keep this on you. It'll go nuts when the forest starts turning. You'll know." The hike began normally. Damp earth, moss-covered stones, the scent of pine and decay. Roy led me up a ridge trail no wider than a sidewalk, and after about an hour, we reached a clearing with a fallen log shaped like a gate. He stopped. "This is it," he said. "Path runs about 3-mile circles back to here." I stepped over the log and into the woods beyond. At first, nothing seemed off. The canopy grew tighter, light dimmed. But that's normal for the Pacific Northwest. I snapped photos, twisted branches, fungi like curled tongues, an oddly placed wind chime hanging from tree. That's when I heard the first click behind me. I turned, expecting Roy. He wasn't there. In fact, he wasn't anywhere. I was alone. I checked my phone. No signal, but the clock read 12:14 p.m. I remember it clearly because it didn't change again for the next 2 hours. I walked. The path narrowed, then widened again like it was breathing. A squirrel stared at me from a branch, unmoving, unblinking. I waved. It didn't flinch. Every so often, I thought I heard whispers. Not words exactly, just a soft intake of breath, like someone inhaling behind you. When I turned, nothing. Then I noticed the compass. It spun violently before freezing, pointing behind me. After about an hour, I emerged into the clearing again. The same clearing. The fallen log. Except something was different. The wind chime was gone. A tree I remembered being struck by lightning was now upright and alive. More than that, the air smelled wrong, too sweet like rotting fruit. I checked my phone again. Still 12:14 p.m. I told myself I'd made a mistake, circled too soon. So I took the path again. Slower, methodical. I took photos every few hundred feet to track progress. And still, I came back to the same clearing. The third loop, I noticed footprints beside mine, bare, small like a child's. But I hadn't seen a soul since Roy. The forest felt more alive now. Trees leaned inward. Bark pulsed beneath my fingertips. At one point, a crow flew overhead and stopped midair as if paused in flight, wings spread wide, frozen. Then I heard humming. A child's voice. Soft. Familiar. Ring around the rosy. It took me a moment to realize the voice was my sister's. She died in 2003. I hadn't heard her voice since. I ran. The forest moved with me. By what I think was the fifth loop, the path changed. Roots reached up like fingers. The sky darkened though no clouds passed. I saw shapes in the trees, people. No, not quite people. They didn't move right. I screamed for Roy. No answer. My camera stopped working. The lens cracked on its own like it imploded. At one point, I found a boot. My boot. Except it was old, worn, partially decomposed, and still warm. I looked down, my boots were intact, but the one in my hand was mine. I recognized the stitching, the brand. The compass began to bleed. No other word for it. A thin, red fluid seeped from the hinge down my palm. That's when I saw it. Myself. A figure standing down the path, wearing my clothes, face blank like a mannequin. It raised its hand and waved. I didn't wave back. I turned and walked, praying for the clearing, praying for anything but that thing to follow. When I returned to the clearing again, it was dusk, but my phone still read 12:14 p.m. And this time, Roy was waiting. Only. He was much, much older. That was day one. I stayed in that loop for what felt like 4 days. The things I saw, the versions of me I met, the whispers I started answering without knowing why. This is just the beginning. There is something alive in that forest. Something ancient. Something wrong. And once you step into its path, it never lets you leave the same. I don't know how long I stood there staring at Roy. He looked older, much older than when I had first met him. His hair was thinner, his skin more wrinkled, and his eyes held a depth of sorrow and fear that hadn't been there before. Roy, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on me. You came back, he said, his voice raspy. I told you not to go in. I didn't mean to, I replied. I thought I could handle it. He shook his head. No one can handle it. The path. It changes you. I looked around, trying to make sense of everything. The clearing was the same, yet different. The trees seemed taller, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay. I need to get out of here, I said, panic rising in my chest. Roy stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. You can't leave until it lets you. We sat by the fallen log, the only familiar landmark in this ever-changing forest. Roy explained that he had been trapped here for years, unable to escape the loop. He had tried everything, marking trees, leaving breadcrumbs, even burning parts of the forest, but nothing worked. The path always brings you back, he said. It feeds off your memories, your fears. It knows you. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean it knows me? Roy looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow. It shows you things, people you've lost, mistakes you've made. It wants you to stay. I thought of the humming, the voice that sounded like my sister's. I've seen things, I admitted. Heard things that shouldn't be possible. He nodded. That's how it starts. The days, or what I assumed were days, blurred together. Time had no meaning here. The sun never rose or set. It just hung in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the forest. I began to lose track of reality. I would see figures in the distance, sometimes Roy, sometimes myself. They would mimic my movements, whisper my thoughts. The forest was playing with me, breaking me down. One night, I woke up to find my belongings scattered around the clearing. My camera was smashed, my journal torn to shreds. In the dirt, someone had written, "You belong here." I confronted Roy, demanding answers. He just looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "It's too late," he said. "You're part of it now." Determined to escape, I ventured deeper into the forest, hoping to find an end to the madness. The trees grew denser, the air thicker. I stumbled upon a clearing filled with mirrors, hundreds of them, all reflecting different versions of myself. Some were younger, some older. Some looked terrified, others resigned. As I approached one, it spoke. "You can't leave," it said. "You're one of us now." I screamed, shattering the mirror with a rock. The fragments fell to the ground, each one still reflecting a different version of me. I ran, not looking back, until I collapsed from exhaustion. When I awoke, I was back at the fallen log. Roy was gone. The forest was silent. I stood up, determined to find a way out. I followed the path, ignoring the whispers, the illusions. I focused on my breathing, on each step. After what felt like hours, I saw a break in the trees, a glimpse of the outside world. I ran towards it, bursting through the foliage and into the sunlight. I was free, or so I thought. Back home, everything felt off. My apartment was the same, yet unfamiliar. Friends and family acted differently, as if they were hiding something. I began to notice changes in myself, scars I didn't remember getting, memories that didn't feel like mine. One day, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a compass, identical to the one Roy had given me. Attached was a note. "The path never lets you go." I looked out the window, and for a brief moment, I saw the forest, the same trees, the same path, just beyond the city skyline. The path is always there, waiting. I didn't sleep the night I received that package. The compass sat on my nightstand, unmoving but humming with quiet menace, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. The note was still clutched in my hand, crumpled now with sweat and disbelief. The window beside my bed gave a view of the skyline, a blend of cold concrete and high-rise metal. But that night, nestled between the buildings, I saw it again. The woods, dense and motionless under a colorless sky. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and it was gone. Except it wasn't. Not really. The next day, things began to change, subtly at first. My phone's map app stopped showing my exact location. It placed me on a blank road that curved endlessly, with no labels or destinations. The compass needle spun wildly whenever I stepped outside, and birds, dozens of them, began gathering outside my apartment window, motionless, just watching. I tried to convince myself it was paranoia, leftover trauma, some deep-rooted PTSD from what happened in those woods. But every time I tried to throw the compass away, it would show back up on the counter in the fridge inside the pocket of a jacket I hadn't worn in months. I stopped sleeping. The whispers came back. At first they were barely audible, just flutters of sound behind the hiss of radiators and hum of electronics. But soon they grew louder, clearer. They said my name. They called me back. They said, "You left something behind." 3 days later, I saw Roy again. It was 3:17 a.m. I was washing my face in the bathroom, staring blankly at the sink, trying to wash the fog from my mind. When I looked up, I didn't see my reflection. I saw Roy. He was standing in the woods, bathed in shadow. His eyes were bloodshot, his beard longer than I remembered. His mouth moved, forming words, but there was no sound. I leaned closer, trying to read his lips. He kept repeating one phrase over and over. "You're not out." I stumbled back. My reflection returned, pale and drenched in fear. I ran to my living room and pulled the compass from the drawer. Its needle spun like a wheel before settling, pointing out the window toward the east. I followed it. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no gear, no bag, no food or water. But I walked. Some part of me knew this wasn't about logic. It wasn't about reality. The forest had never left me. I hadn't returned to it. It had followed me back, grown roots in the cracks of my city life. Waited patiently for the moment I stopped pretending. As I walked, the world became quieter. Streetlights dimmed. Cars became fewer and fewer until the only sound was the echo of my own steps. And then the sidewalk ended. I found myself standing at the tree line. The path was waiting. The first step back into the woods felt like falling through glass. Everything behind me, buildings, streets, my name, my life, shattered. The forest swallowed sound again. The canopy above looked like a ceiling of veins. Fog pressed against my legs. The trees had changed. Or maybe I had. They weren't trees anymore. Not really. Their bark was too textured, too warped like stretched skin. Some had knots that looked like closed eyes. I followed the compass. But here's the problem. The compass didn't point north. It didn't point toward anything that made sense. It tugged me in directions that looped. At one point, I walked for an hour, only to find my own footprints, fresh, still pressed in the mud. At another, I passed a discarded water bottle and realized it was the one I had lost years ago when I first entered this cursed place. The forest remembered. It remembered me. The air turned thicker, wetter. The trees began to lean unnaturally, almost as if they were bending to whisper to one another. Shadows darted between them, too fast to see, but always just at the edge of vision. Then I saw myself. He stood a few feet away, staring. Same clothes, same scars, same eyes, but it wasn't me. He smiled, crooked and wrong. Then he turned and ran into the trees. I followed without thinking. I don't know how long I chased him, minutes, hours, days. Time died in this place. Eventually, I stumbled into a clearing I'd never seen before. At its center was a cabin. Old, rotted, sagging like a corpse. I approached it, heart thudding. Inside, I found a single room. The walls were lined with photographs, all of me. Every moment of my life captured in still black and white. My first day of school. My father's funeral. A hospital room I couldn't remember. In the center of the room was a bed. On it lay me. Not a mirror version. Not a doppelganger. Me. I watched myself sleep. His eyes were open, unblinking. Tears ran down his face. And when I reached out to touch him, he whispered, "We never left." The forest doesn't trap your body. It traps your mind. Every path, every loop, it's not to confuse you. It's to break you. It divides you. You don't just get lost. You get split. Part of you stays. Part of you goes back. But neither is whole. I stumbled out of the cabin, hyperventilating. The compass pulsed in my hand, red hot. I hurled it as far as I could. And the moment it hit the ground, everything changed. The trees folded backward. The ground rolled like fabric being pulled. And I saw the path again. The same path I had first walked. But now, every tree along it had a face. And every face was mine. I ran, not because I thought it would help, not because I expected to escape. I ran because everything in me, the part still human, the part still sane, screamed to move. Because when you see your own face peeling out of a tree trunk, its eyes blinking, its mouth moving silently as sap leaks from the lips, you run. Branches clawed at my skin like fingers. My lungs burned, but the forest didn't chase me. It simply shifted. Behind me, the trees rearranged subtly. Ahead of me, the light bent and pulsed like a heartbeat. The forest didn't need to pursue. It just waited. It folded space until you weren't running forward anymore, just around. The moment I stumbled, it happened again. The air snapped like a rubber band. I hit the ground hard, and when I looked up, I was no longer in motion. I was back at the cabin, but the cabin was burning. The sky above the flames wasn't sky at all. It looked like a dome of black, laced with throbbing red veins. The fire didn't spread like real fire. It rippled, flickered across surfaces like water refusing to drown. I shouted Roy's name, hoping he'd somehow made it out. Instead, the door burst open. A figure staggered out, not Roy, not me. It was someone else entirely. A woman, barefoot and shaking, her hair hanging in wet clumps. Her eyes were wide and white, like they'd rolled back too far and gotten stuck. She collapsed in front of me. I hesitated, then knelt beside her. Her skin was ice cold. She whispered something, breath trembling on her cracked lips. "You're the last piece." Then she dissolved into ash. Just crumbled, like she'd been made of old paper. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking. My body felt wrong, heavier, like the forest had filled my bones with wet sand. And then I heard the humming. It was the same hum from when I first entered the path. Soft, feminine, and familiar. I followed it. I don't know how long I walked. I don't remember sleeping or eating. The path wound tighter like a spiral. I kept seeing symbols carved into the trees, thin rings with slashes through them, names scratched in a bark. Some I recognized, some I didn't. I passed a tree that had my name on it. The bark beneath it had peeled back, exposing raw, red flesh. Something pulsed under it, something alive. I was going mad. But this place didn't drive you mad with fear. No, it was more intimate than that. It twisted you until you couldn't tell if you were you anymore. Until escape felt like the wrong thing to want. I found him again, or rather, he found me. Roy looked barely human now. He had grown taller, thinner, his arms too long, his neck stretched unnaturally. His eyes were pale, glassy, like a fish left too long out of water. "You have to finish the circle," he said. His voice wasn't his voice anymore. It sounded like multiple people speaking at once. Male and female. Young and old. "What circle?" Roy pointed to the ground beneath our feet. There in the moss and dirt was a perfect ring of stones. Inside it, a sigil had been etched, concentric circles within a larger one, lines crossing like spider webs. "You opened it when you came," he said. "Now you have to close it, before it fully wakes up." "What wakes up?" I asked. Roy's smile was jagged. "It's already watching." He backed away, vanishing into the trees like mist dispersing in wind. The compass returned. It was there, sitting on the sigil, undamaged. The needle didn't move. It pointed straight down. I picked it up. A jolt shot through me, like lightning down my spine. My vision blurred, and I saw, not with eyes, but with something deeper. I saw the path as it truly was. Not a trail through a forest, but a mouth. An ancient structure folded through dimensions, lined with trees that weren't trees at all, but nerves. Every step taken on that path fed it. Every memory forgotten, every echo repeated, nourished something waiting beneath it. It didn't matter where you entered. It always circled back to you. It wanted you to know yourself too well. To understand that yourself, your identity, wasn't a fixed thing. Just an echo. A meat cloak. Something to wear while it took its time. I tried to run again. But this time, there was no path, just shifting leaves, endless trunks, and the sound of something walking behind me. I turned. The trees were filled with people. Hundreds of them. Motionless. Hanging in the branches like dolls. Their faces warped, smiling with mouths too wide, eyes too small. All of them whispering one thing in unison. We are you. I dropped the compass. The whispers stopped. And then the forest spoke. Not in words. In feelings. It pushed into my thoughts like a pressure wave, and I finally understood the truth. The path didn't trap people to keep them from escaping. It trapped them so it could become them. The final revelation hit like a punch to the soul. There is no getting out. There is no you. When you step on the path, it begins replicating you in every possible iteration. Memories are duplicated, souls fractured, possibilities spun endlessly like thread through a spinning wheel. And as long as you keep walking, it gets closer to a version of you that will stay willingly. And that's all it needs. Not your body, not your soul, just your agreement. When I woke, I was outside the forest, back in the city, except the streets were quiet. Too quiet. No people, no cars. The sky was a washed-out gray. In the distance, trees swayed where buildings used to stand. I walked to a mirror. My reflection was wrong. It blinked out of sync. Its mouth smiled before mine did. And then it whispered, "Welcome home."